The most important or the common issues that I've seen is relationship strain in the co-investing living. Initially, they are very motivated. They want to get into the property. We want to buy the property. And when one person is doing all the work, the other person is not doing the work. But when it comes to the profit splitting, it's going to get split by 50-50. The person who is doing all the hard yards is not going to be happy. And I've actually seen that with one of a few of my clients. They're like, the other person doesn't do it. I don't want to. I want to get out of these things. And especially when you are investing in your personal name, it's going to be really messy.
Yes, yes, typically. And that's why, having the right accountability and having the right share splits is very important. People naturally think that, if one person is bringing in serviceability, the other person is bringing in cash, there could be a 50-50 split. I always say to people that, that split doesn't not always have to be 50-50. You need to take the amount of work or the sweat equity that the person is bringing into the deal. You need to take cash versus serviceability as well. You could be co-investing in a way where one person is bringing in all the serviceability and the other person is only bringing in a portion of the cash, for the deposits or the holding cost. And so, that the equitable in these scenarios doesn't mean 50-50. It could be 60-40 or 70-30, depending on, because ultimately serviceability is your capital contribution to the deal, right? And a lot of people don't think that. I've made that mistakes in my, younger days, when I was 24, especially doing my first project. And I did that split of 50-50, did all the hard work and handed away that 50% profit to someone else. But ultimately, that's how you learn, right? Sometimes it's okay to get into these deals to get, some runs on the boards. What are other disadvantages? Let's talk about the risk transfers between the two parties. Let's going back to the parents' conversation. Yes, the structure plays a really important part, but I've seen parents going into the loans with their kids. Is there a better way? Can they not just hand out the money to the kids? What do you think about, as a gift or, to help them in acquisition of their investment properties rather than getting into the loan with them?
Handing cash is one part. Second is if they're facing the serviceability issue and where your parents are jumping in for the serviceability purpose, it makes sense. But there are guarantor loans as well, where, if the total equity, if they have sufficient equity, the guarantors can come out of that loan. So that will be a more ideal rather than co-investing. But having that right structure, as you said, is very, very important. Second is that financial strain. So in case if one party passes out or if they lose their job, the other party is still liable to make that payment. And for whatever reason, if one party defaults, the other party is still accountable and liable to make that full payment. And that's going to put a lot of financial strain on the other party.
Definitely. And you see a lot of co-investing happening in superannuation or SMSF side of things these days.
Absolutely. Yeah. So there is a bed trust we have to do. And SMSF, it's very common that people come together, chip in their super and get into this kind of funds.
And I always say to people, look, if you want to really test out co-investing, maybe start off on the SMSF side of things. And again, this should not be constituted as, financial advice or tax advice. But SMSF is an easier entry point because typically both of you cannot access SMSF. You would be in a similar scenario where none of you have any properties in SMSF, and you can set up a central superannuation fund or SMSF or self-managed superannuation fund, bring all your money there and start investing through that to test and see as to how this is going to work out. And the ongoing holding cost is provided through the contributions anyway. So you don't have to really sacrifice your lifestyle in order to do any of these co-investing into the SMSF space.
Yeah, absolutely. But also it comes down to your investment goals. So all the parties have to be aligned, because if one party after 2 years they exhaust saying that now I want to get out of this, it becomes messy.
Yes. And I think that's one of the biggest risks as well when it comes to co-investing, right? Because things change, life moves on, financial decisions change. People try to build bigger houses for themselves or change their own personal lifestyle. And if they are co-investing with other people, they could potentially find out that 2 or 3 years down the track, they cannot move their loans or they cannot do a lot of these things that they want to because of this one small loan that is costing them everything, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. I have a really interesting story here for, one of my clients, and they did this in the bestest of the intention, So the two brothers, they came in together. They wanted to buy a property for their parents to live in. And so they came in together. The other party was really high net worth party. And so they had a lot of serviceability. And so they provided everything in cash towards their, them putting in through. And this person, brought in the serviceability because they were not really well to do at that time, right? And so the loan was under their name. They provided the deposit, and that's how they bought the place for the parents. But they parked all of this into a trust, typically. And that's where it became really interesting. So no one explained to them how this works. They went out and bought a house and land package in a year's time, thinking that, we're going to buy this $700,000-$800,000 property that, we are going to settle in 2 years' time. 2 years later, they've paid 10% deposit on that. I think $70,000 to $80,000. 2 years later, they go to the bank. The bank said no for them to get any loan. So not only did they missed out on that deposit, they lost that deposit because of that single small property that they bought, like $350,000 or $400,000 property. And such a shame, right? Individually, it should have been fine just because they combined all of this together. All of this cross basically made it look like from bank's perspective that, they can't get any new loans, or, they're stuck into some of these things. And so some of these mistakes that you make, or some of these decisions that you make around co-investing might not provide, might be a short-term solution, but it would be a long-term pain. And you would only find that out in 2 years or 3 years' time. And what tends to happen is because of these massive transactional costs that comes with this, where you can't sell the house because the market is crap, or you can't move it to other person because it triggers stamp duty, or you can't move it into any other structure, it basically means that you're stuck there for a very long time. And so people, miss out on these massive opportunity costs when it comes to co-investing side of things. Why does it typically work into developments is an interesting one. My personal feeling and take is that development is an in and out game. And so there is a finite time limit. You know that the development is going to finish in 24 months or 36 months. And so you know that even if you're co-investing, you know that at the end of 2 years or 3 years, there is an exit strategy in place for you to come out of these things, be it through deed of partition, where you are splitting the loans and bringing the property back into your own personal property portfolios. Where it becomes quite cumbersome is where there is no exit strategy in place. You're acquiring it for the sake of acquiring it.
Yes.
And the only exit strategy is sell, right? And that's where it becomes really, really tricky.